I love the smell of the cardboard, the feel of the paper, the texture of them, the history in them, the labels, like the original labels the record company used, the whole thing, even the inner sleeve, the different papers that we use with the different ads, you know, they're historical, and maybe it takes me back to my youth or something. But yeah, we all do, we just love that.
That's it, it's special, you know what I mean? It's like each individual release is, you know, it's something, you can do something with it. It's got, you know, beauty of that size is you get killer artwork that, you know, makes it, you know, you can just take it to another place for you. You can really, you know, make it special to you.
The fact that you have the record in your hand, you play it, you know, you've got the cover you can read with all the details on it. You don't have to squint at a little thing like this or read it off a computer screen. It's more intimate. I think that's one of the realities of it.
For a lot of people, it's not about the sound, it's about the object. You've got a substantial, you know, item that you'll buy. It's collectible, it retains its value. I think there's a classic format notion of it.
A record has a very warm sound. It's like sitting by an open fire, whereas a CD is like sitting under a fluorescent lamp. So it's a warmer thing. It's a more human thing. It's an acoustic thing. It's a lot more pleasing to the ear, I think, than CDs.
The distortion that is involved in an analog system is what's called enharmonic. It's enjoyable to listen to. It's something that you're more likely to tap your toes to. And at the end of the day, listening to music is an analog experience. That when I see people coming in clutching certain types of recordings, I realise that they're listening to the recordings, not to the music. And that's not what this is all about. Our entire impetus here is to try and get past all the electronics and just enjoy the experience. And vinyl helps you to do that in a simpler, straighter way. And 2-channel is definitely a complete resurgence.
Well, the Beatles' White Album, can you see that? It's a record. You know, it was made as a record. It's got 4 sides, you know, and each side's sort of a bit different, and you know, the art that they put into just having the white cover after the Sgt. Pepper's big deal cover, and so to really experience this, you should have it on record, you know, how it was intended to be. And so I think that's got a lot to do with it. People just want it because that's what it is, you know, and it's like anything, you know, it's the real deal, it's the real thing.
There's a lot of expectation in vinyl that people, when they actually hear it, they just go, oh, it's not as great as I thought it was going to be. Then there's other people who just go, it's fantastic, it's got the warmth, it's got the, you know, expansive analog sound, if you like. But I think in terms of audio fidelity, you know, I mean, it's getting better and better and better, but it's a different you know, representation of the sound, and that can be subtle to some people, it can be broad to others.
The CD thing took over, you know, the early 90s, and it was CDs were going to be the future, and CDs were it, and only idiots owned vinyl, and you know, they were shit, and so everyone sold their record collections because CDs were going to be the way. Indestructible, unscratchable, better sounding. And then we all heard CDs and went, well, I don't notice any difference. It didn't sound any different or better, and not as appealing, just in the aesthetic side of them.
A CD was an interesting phenomenon. The first CD that I was given, as to suggest to a chain of recording shops what classical music they should be stocking, I actually couldn't listen to it. It was hard, harsh and unmusical. That was my first experience of CD a long, long time ago.
CDs they're not very romantic. They don't, I guess they just don't get the blood flowing like a record does.
if you look at the CD, it's over the years become devalued. When you were getting a CD every week on your newspaper for nothing, the accessibility of downloading, I think the great sort of mystique of the technology that was digital at its advent has by and large sort of become mainstream, it's dissipated. There's no great perceived value in a CD.
Who knows what happened, but I think people just picked up on the fact that vinyls are fantastic.
Kids are buying vinyl. They're rejecting CDs because they're saying it's sort of the format that mum and dad listen to. They've got a fascination with it. They'll go out and see a gig and they're happy to come home with one under their arm and go out and sort of have that as a bit of a keepsake. I've been to this gig tonight, look what I've got the vinyl. They may not even have a turntable.
I'm a firm believer in the fact that if people had heard a good turntable, like I spent $500 on a turntable in '79, most people were spending $120 on a Japanese plastic one. If they'd heard a decent turntable, CDs would never have taken the foothold that they did. Because to me, at the time, it was clear that CDs were inferior to a high quality vinyl source. And now everybody is starting to understand that.
Records have hiss and crackle and pop and stuff like that, but sometimes you get a record and it's old and it sounds like that, and you're like, man, this record has had a life, you know what I mean? Like, you make a James Brown record from 1968, and it's all scuffed up, and you're like, man, this record has been loved, this record is like, people have played this, like, think about the parties this record has been to,
When I was growing up, I had records that had pops and crackles on them, and I knew every pop and crackle, and it was part of the whole experience to me, so. And, CDs are a little bit sterile in that way, they don't really have a lot of character.
Clicks and pops, they shouldn't be there, right? But the thing is, with the process and the way it and the way it works, you will get some extraneous noise in there. There can be an issue with they call horns on the lacquer cutting when the cutting stylus is too hot. It actually sort of cuts its groove, but it actually melts some of the compound in. So when you actually plate it and you press that in a record, that horn is represented, goes bang. So
it's like with antiques, you want that patina, that kind of aging thing. You don't want antiques to look perfect. You want them to have lived a life. And I think it's the same with records. Like sometimes the worse the record sounds, the more stories it has to tell.
What they used to do when the average run size was 10,000 units, they would have a set of microscopes and just somebody listening to those, marking out where those pops were on the microscope, and then nicking them, taking them out of the grooves. Boffins, audio mastering engineers and whatnot don't understand why we're going to vinyl, because you've just got that, you do have that noise floor. So as far as clicks and pops, it's always something you need to sort of attempt to minimise, but you're not going to get a perfectly clean record. You can always, you listen, you'll always hear something. So, but turn it up.
An Australian vinyl was probably some of the worst in the world in the 60s and 70s. The quality of pressings has gone up dramatically, and it doesn't matter whether you like the music or not. The recording quality and the reproduction quality is way up there with anything we can reproduce.
Once you're a record collector, once you get into music, it's not something that you stop or can stop. You might be able to stop smoking cigarettes and alcohol, but you can't stop wanting more records. It's like there's no reason to stop. We still have guys that have been coming in here for 30 years, 20 years. Melbourne's just a great city. The radio station thing and the record shops. There's some really good shops. We do well in Melbourne, I think.
We're actually quite proud of what we do, because I want my customers to come back, and if they know that I'm doing the right thing, doing it honestly, and doing it with their best interests in heart, yes, they're in here because they want to buy a sound system. I'm happy to take their money, but I want to do it in the best possible way.
A lot of people are buying records off the internet, but for me, you can't beat coming into a record shop, seeing it, having a listen, you know, and saying, oh, that looks cool, have a listen, that looks cool, have a listen, you know. But, you know, it's a small business, so there's always, you know, you're almost always on the edge, you know, no matter what you do, really.
We've been doing work for Indonesia, Malaysia, got a couple of orders on for Taiwan, so, you know, it's not just Australia that's you know, re-embracing vinyl, it's all over. You know, even with our higher costs and our limited capacity and the negative economies that we're working with, because we're not paying for, you know, $10 a kilo for air freight from the States or Europe, there's enough in it for us to make a margin. I mean, everybody here is on board and they're just kind of working above and beyond, you know, what a 9-to-5 job entails, because they're just really keen to be a part of something that's getting better, that's developing, you know, something they can be proud of. You know, we're all kind of getting quite proud of the stuff we're starting to do. Given the uncertainty of this wave of vinyl popularity, you know, it may only have 5 years in it, and it'll sort of go to a very, you know, sort of low-key niche thing. Might even have that in it. Some people swear by it. They'll say, look, we just love that vinyl sound. It's a limited, redundant format, but there's something endearing about it, be it the analog, be it the snap, crackle and pop, be it, you know, be it any number of things.
Vinyl's in a pretty strong condition. It's made a pretty fantastic comeback. There will always be sought after vinyl, there will always be rare vinyl, and there will always be people discovering music on vinyl and going to op shops and buying it for $1. And I mean, the more that people discover weird things in op shops, the more I think vinyl will live on.